What if the thing you call discipline is slowly turning into obsession? The late nights, the relentless training, the refusal to stop. What if it's not just commitment, but something deeper? Something that's costing you more than you realize. That is the silent battle within Roronoa Zoro in One Piece. Because Zoro isn't just chasing greatness, he's chasing a promise. And when a promise becomes your identity, the line between discipline and obsession begins to disappear. Zoro's journey begins with a loss that shapes everything that follows. His rivalry with Kuina is not just competition, it's purpose, it's direction, it's the foundation of his ambition. And when that rivalry is suddenly taken away, when Kuina is gone, Zoro is left with something powerful and dangerous, a promise. A promise to become the greatest swordsman in the world, not just for himself, but for both of them. And this is where the psychology of his character is formed. Because when you tie your identity to a promise, it becomes more than a goal. It becomes something you cannot let go of, something that defines your worth. And for Zoro, that promise becomes everything. From that point forward, his life is structured around one thing: mastery. Every action, every decision, every moment is filtered through that goal. He trains relentlessly, pushes his body beyond its limits, accepts pain as part of the process. And on the surface, this looks like discipline. It looks like focus. It looks like strength. But underneath it, there is pressure. Because when your entire identity is built around one objective, failure becomes more than a setback. It becomes a threat to who you are. This is the hidden cost of obsession. Zoro doesn't just want to improve, he needs to. Because stopping, slowing down, or falling behind is not an option in his mind. There is no alternative path, no backup identity, no version of himself that exists outside of becoming the greatest swordsman. And that creates intensity. An intensity that fuels his growth, but also isolates him. Because obsession often requires sacrifice. Time, comfort, relationships, things that don't align with the goal are pushed aside. Not because they're unimportant, but because they are seen as distractions. And this is where Zoro's character becomes more complex. Because despite his obsession, he still forms bonds. He still becomes part of something bigger when he joins Monkey D. Luffy and the crew. But even within that connection, his mindset doesn't fully change. His goal remains central. His discipline remains absolute. However, something subtle begins to shift. Because being part of a crew introduces something Zoro didn't have before: shared purpose, responsibility beyond himself. And this begins to challenge his internal structure. Because now, it's not just about his promise, it's also about protecting others, supporting others, being there when it matters. And this creates tension. Because what happens when your personal goal conflicts with your responsibility to others? This question becomes real in moments where Zoro is forced to choose between his ambition and his loyalty. And in those moments, we see something powerful. Zoro chooses loyalty. This doesn't mean he abandons his goal. It means he expands his identity. Because now, he is not just a swordsman chasing greatness. He is a protector, a crewmate, someone whose strength serves a purpose beyond himself. And this is where discipline begins to evolve. Because discipline at its highest level is not just about self-control, it's about alignment. Aligning your actions with something meaningful, something that goes beyond ego. Zoro's most defining moment captures this perfectly. When he is faced with the opportunity to protect his captain, he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't calculate the cost. He takes the pain, all of it, without recognition, without needing anyone to know. This moment is not just about strength, it's about identity. Because in that moment, Zoro proves something. His discipline is no longer just about achieving his goal. It's about living by a code of loyalty, honor, and sacrifice. And that transforms everything. Because now, his obsession is no longer self-centered, it is integrated into something larger. But the internal tension never fully disappears. Zoro still pushes himself to extremes, still refuses to accept weakness, still carries the weight of his promise. And this shows us something important. Growth does not mean eliminating your intensity. It means learning how to direct it. Because intensity, when uncontrolled, can become destructive. But when guided, it becomes powerful. Zoro teaches us that mastery requires sacrifice, but also awareness. Because without awareness, discipline can turn into self-destruction. It can blind you to your limits, disconnect you from others, and trap you in a cycle of constant pressure. But when you balance discipline with purpose, when you connect your ambition to something meaningful, it becomes sustainable. It becomes something that builds you instead of breaking you. There's also something important about how Zoro handles pain. He doesn't avoid it. He doesn't complain about it. He accepts it. And in doing so, he develops resilience, the ability to continue even when things are difficult. But this resilience comes with a risk, because when you normalize pain, you can lose sight of your limits. And that's where awareness becomes critical. Because true mastery is not just about how much you can endure. It's about knowing when to push and when to recover, when to fight and when to step back, when to chase and when to reflect. Zoro's journey is a constant balance between these forces, between discipline and obsession, between ambition and connection, between self and purpose. And that balance is what defines his growth. At the end of the day, Zoro is not just a swordsman chasing a title. He is a person navigating the cost of greatness, learning that mastery is not just about reaching the top, but about who you become in the process. Because the real question is not, how far can you go? It's what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? And more importantly, is it worth it?